Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to our next story. The next story was one that I found very interesting to me. It's actually quite fascinating to me. It was so fascinating, I was out with a girl, and as she's sitting there smoking a cigarette, I go, have you ever heard the story about the battle between the parliamentarians and the royalists? And she's smoking her cigarette, and she's like, no. That's how excited I was about the story. It wasn't a random girl, it was a friend of mine, but I was like telling people it in real life. Now you're going to be like, Jason, thanks for hyping it up. But anyways, so the year, I don't have the exact year, the century, 17th century. It is the height of the English Civil War. It was a battle. The war was between the parliamentarians and the royalists, who were royal to the king and quite fans of Lord Sid's royals. Sorry, that was dumb. The parliamentarians, their nicknames were called the Roundheads, which I think is hilarious because that's how you generally describe every human head. I'm assuming they had some sort of stupid-looking helmet that made their head look rounder. But if someone's like, hey, Roundhead, I'd be like, oh, are you talking to me? That is quite apt for the shape of my head. So anyways, the Royalists and the Roundheads are going to war. There's this city. I really hope I wrote it down. I didn't. Here, hold on. Oh, yeah, I did. Here it is. Colchester. Now, at this point, people are like, I know where this story's going, but not everyone does. Don't spoil it. Don't spoil it. And when, in fact, everyone's like, I have no idea where this story's going. We're the city of Colchester. It is controlled by the Royalists. The Roundheads are going to advance on the city. Now, Colchester has two advantages going for them. It's a hardened target. It's a city that has a ton of weaponry. So they're not really worried about being invaded. They know that they can repel an invading force. But they really put their faith in a giant cannon that's posted on this wall, like on this tower of this church, and its operator, One-Eyed Jack Thompson. One-Eyed Jack Thompson. So you have this church tower, so you had a wide field of view. This massive cannon, the biggest cannon in the city, probably one of the biggest cannons in the region. And One-Eyed Jack Thompson. Now, One-Eyed Jack Thompson had only one eye, that's how he got his nickname, but he was a crack shot. He knew how to use the cannon. He was a veteran. There was no way that the Roundheads were going to take this city. They try it, though. The Royalists hold them off. The Roundheads keep trying over and over again. And again, a key to their defense was One-Eyed Jack Thompson and his massive cannon. Just launching these cannonballs. Green grass goes everywhere. Little weeds. Leprechauns are getting blown to bits. And so are a bunch of Roundheads as these giant cannonballs are rolling through the ranks, breaking everyone's legs, bouncing off the ground, hitting them in the head, just smack. I mean, this cannon was having a devastating effect on the Roundheads. And the Roundheads are like, you know what, we're just going to lay siege. At this point, we're going to pull back to a certain area, just lay siege. No one gets in, no one gets out. Now, it was a range war at a certain point because they wanted to lay siege, but the giant cannon could shoot farther. So the Roundheads are like, listen, we can lay siege to this thing, but that thing's going to keep chopping us up. But what else? We can't take the city right now. We're just going to have to hope we don't get crushed by these giant cannonballs flying at us constantly. And we can't get our cannons close enough to knock it down. Siege goes on. And they're like, just keep shooting cannonballs at the city. We can't get to this one. We can't destroy this giant one just yet. Keep laying cannonballs into the city. Woo, 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 woo. Those aren't people cheering. Those are cannonballs coming to the people and killing them in the city. So now you just have daily barrages from both sides. In the city of Colchester, they're eating their pets. They're running out of food. They're eating their shoes. And they're suspiciously eyeing any fat babies because the siege is going on a little too long. They didn't have the preparations for this. They don't want to give up. But One-Eyed Jack is unstoppable with this giant cannon. Eventually, the Roundhead general says, you know what? We got to take this cannon out. Like this, they don't know how bad it is in the city. They can kind of guess because it's been so long. But they know how bad it is out there when all of their troops are mangled by this giant cannon. So let's push our cannon forward. They're going to be in range of One-Eyed Jack Thompson and the giant cannon. Well, let's push them forward. We'll get in there, and I want every cannon concentrating fire on that tower. I don't care how many of our guys gets taken out, because if we don't take this out, if we don't take that tower out, we cannot take the city. So they moved in their troops. They got their cannons and just One-Eyed Jack Thompson is lobbing these massive cannonballs and just blowing up. But they get enough cannons close enough, and they aim them just right. One-Eyed Jack Thompson looks up, sees a bunch of cannonballs coming at him, turns to the camera and goes, "Today is a good day to die." The cannonballs miss Jack Thompson in the cannon, but hit the wall underneath, and the church tower collapses. Now, the people in the city are very, very panicked at this point, because that was their Death Star weapon. That was the only thing keeping the Roundheads from coming in any earlier. The Royalists show up, dust everything off. One of them picks up the crumpled body of One-Eyed Jack Thompson and goes, "No!" And they're like, "Dude, put him down and help us move this stupid cannon," because they got to get that cannon in position. It's pretty busted up, but at the end of the day, it's just a giant cast iron thing that holds gunpowder and balls. But like the hinges, the wheels, and all that stuff are jacked up. And they're like, "We got to move it somewhere. We got to get it on another wall, and we have to do it now." So all of the troops are trying to move this cannon. Roundheads are approaching, and they're like, "Crap, this is not going to go well." They start lashing it to their horses. They start trying to drag it through the street to anywhere else where they can elevate it, but it's too heavy. They can't move it. The Roundheads, they take the better positions. The town leaders say, "Should we hold out? Should we hold out? What do we do? We lost our super weapon. We have these other cannons. We're kind of able to hold them at bay, but not for any amount of time." And they start getting word that other cities that are loyal to the king have started to surrender, so they surrender too. So the Roundheads invade the city. And the general of the Roundheads says, "I want to see that cannon. I want to take a look at that cannon." So they ride their horses over to the cannon, and it's just laying there on the ground. The general's like, "So many men, so many lives destroyed by that hunk of metal." He sees a little street urchin walking by. He goes, "Hey, son, what was the name of this cannon?" The street urchin looks up at him and goes, "Dumpty, Humpty Dumpty." So that story first off, that story I just told you, imagine me telling that story to a young woman smoking a cigarette outside of a restaurant. Almost word for word and about as long. She sat there smoking the cigarette. If she didn't know me as well as she did, I would assume she would have walked away or thought I was some sort of psychopath. But that is the true story of Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men could have put Humpty back together again. Now, there are people who say that no, the Humpty Dumpty thing references like the fall of the power of the Pope and stuff like that. There's a little bit of dispute to that, but back in those olden times, Humpty Dumpty was the term for a fat person. And just like how when we invented the nuclear atom bomb, I guess I should say, fat man and little boy, it was the same thing. They invented this giant cannon, and it probably had some official name, but because it was huge, people just called it Humpty Dumpty, like it was some fat dude. And that was the slang term for the cannon, was Humpty Dumpty. And that, again, some nerd will be like, "No, actually, Humpty Dumpty is reference to King Edward VIII, who..." No. Humpty Dumpty's a story about a badass cannon that fell off a wall, and in a last-ditch effort to get it moved into another position. Oh, and I should say, the entire story I told you was true, except for the general showing up at the end and asking the urchin. That's all historical. So whether or not the nursery rhyme is related to that cannon was known as a Humpty Dumpty, a big cannon. I don't know, I really like the story. I thought it was charming. As a young woman smoking a cigarette. And she goes, "Yeah, I think I heard that before." I was like, "Oh, that's all the only response I got from my animated story." She doesn't listen to the podcast, so I can say whatever I want about her. That's the power of the podcast, apparently. I've made that a comment a couple times. "Oh, she doesn't listen to the podcast. I can say whatever I want." That was a clip from our daily podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime news. If you want to hear the full episode that this clip came from, check the link below. Please like and subscribe. And hit that little bell, too. That does some magical stuff. Thanks, guys.